Hi there, it's November 17th, and today we're commencing a new letter in the Greek scriptures. We're in the letter of James, and we're reading chapter 1 from verses 1 to 18. James is actually properly Yaakov, Jacob, the brother of Jesus. It's suggested he could be one of the other Jameses, one of the disciples of Jesus, but most scholars agree that this is talking about James, the brother of Jesus. And James, who became a leader of the Jerusalem church after the time of Jesus, and one of the pillars of the church that Paul describes in Galatians, along with Peter and John. And so James is very much considered an authority because he's been with Jesus, he's grown up with Jesus, he's known by Jesus. James is writing to Jewish believers. He says he's writing to the 12 tribes in the diaspora, that is, in the scattered tribes of Judah and Israel that were right throughout the empire. And so he's very much writing in a very accessible form to Jewish believers. He particularly seems to be writing in a style not unlike the Proverbs and the wisdom writing. He's writing in a form that actually is very familiar to Jewish people. And so, of course, the first thing he does is he talks about wisdom, and he actually says if anyone lacks wisdom, in Hebrew chokhmah, not like the Greek sophia, not like the Greek idea of wisdom that's a collection of facts, but chokhmah, which is the Hebrew wisdom in action, wisdom put into action, wisdom that results in something coming out of our lives. He says if anyone lacks that wisdom, let him ask God. James opens up his letter actually by saying that don't be surprised if you face trials, if you face difficulties. He's writing against the historical context, perhaps, for the Jews who are finding it more and more difficult to worship Jesus, to be faithful to Messiah Jesus in the midst of hostile Jewish community and also a hostile Roman environment. And so the new churches that are coming forth are facing persecution and difficulty. In fact, Jacob himself, James, the brother of Jesus, the writer of this letter, is probably martyred sometime between 62 and 69 AD. So he himself is suffering. But one thing, as I say, that James is urging his readers to do is to ask wisdom from God. Wisdom how to face these difficulties without resorting to violence, without behaving in a way that is not consistent with the grace that they've received. And he wants to see that people are going to be firm in this, not double-minded, that when they ask God for wisdom, they're not making recourse to human wisdom, but they are acting with God's wisdom. And then he also highlights the issue of riches and poverty. And he's saying that if you're poor, rejoice in being in that place. Rejoice in being a place of being dependent on God, because poverty is about dependence on God. And also saying that if you find yourself with riches, if you find yourself with property, and that's an interesting thing because it suggests that there were people in the churches who did have means, who did have riches. He says if you have those riches, don't let them control you. Don't let them be the thing that pushes you along. And he again then goes back later on in this reading to the theme of enduring the testing, the difficulties, the challenges that they're facing. He encourages his readers to endure that, but not to assume that it's God who is the source of the difficulties. He's not the source of evil. He's not the source of the persecution that's coming against them. But what God will do is he will make the most of everything that they're going through. He will make the most of what they're suffering, because actually all good and perfect gifts come from the Father of lights. God is the author, God is the source of what is good and perfect. And he is our Father through the word of truth. And therefore in this first reading from the book of Jacob or James, we're finding out this God who is a Father, but one who gives us wisdom. He gives us the ability to stand up and to stand against evil and to endure suffering through the power of Jesus, and also by the wisdom that God brings to us. May we, as we go through today, ask God for that wisdom, not being double-minded, not turning around, but asking God for the ability, the insight, the discernment to live this life he's called us to be faithful to him and not resort to the evil ways of the world, but live true to him. Have a very good November 17th.